Good morning. Good morning, everyone. The March 4th County Commission meeting is now in order. We have from the St. Helens Catholic Church, Father Tri Tang Fong, and we welcome you. This is about your third time, and we appreciate every time you come. And also, Will Collins will be doing the pledge. Please stand.
God our Father, giver of life, we entrust the United States of America to your loving care. You are the rock on which this nation was founded. You alone are the true source of our cherished right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Send your Spirit to touch the hearts of our nation and local leaders. Open their minds to the great wars of human life, the responsibilities that accompany human freedom. Through you, authority is rightly administered, laws are enacted, and judgment is decreed. May they always seek the ways of righteousness, justice, and mercy. Grant that they may enable, by your power, protection to lead our country and cities with honesty and integrity. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions or deletions or emergency items for the agenda?
Madam Chair, I would request that we add item 13D2. This was an email I received over the weekend about a Senate bill that the legislature will be starting to work on today regarding aggregate mining and local county ability. And I'd like to bring it to the board today so we can take action on this if the board deems appropriate.
Do I have any discussion? The only thing about that is I've not read it, and I did see this late yesterday afternoon. Is it an emergency? Are they going to take action on this? Because we have no staff input on this.
Yeah, I know that the legislature is meeting today, and I don't know how fast this would proceed. So I think it is important that we...
Is staff ready to make a recommendation on this?
I'm ready to discuss it. I'm not sure what the end result will be after the discussion.
Are you up to speed on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have any other discussion?
I'd like Mr. Collins to discuss it. I had the opportunity to see the document, and I received it about 5 o'clock last night.
Your microphone's not on, Commissioner.
I received the document about 5 o'clock last night, and I have not had time to thoroughly review it, and I've contacted some state representation. Unfortunately, I don't know which direction we need to go in, and I'm looking for your input at this time, Will.
Well, I think if you want to have discussion, you should probably add it to the agenda, whether you take action on it today or not. I don't think we should be discussing this matter under additions and deletions. We should either put it on or not, and then discuss it if it's been added.
Where do you suppose we should put it?
Well, Commissioner O'Brien asked 13B2 under his matters.
Right. And you agree with that?
That would be the appropriate place for it. Yeah.
Right. When that's what we said. Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. Proclamations and presentations. We have a presentation and proclamation recognizing March 2008 as American Red Cross Day.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman.
And it's going to handle this. Good morning.
I'd like to have Sarah Rui come up, and she's a Chief Executive Officer for the North Treasure Coast chapter of the American Red Cross, and I'd like to read this presentation. There's a proclamation, March 2008 as American Red Cross Month. Whereas every day, American Red Cross volunteers and employees carry out their mission by providing essential services to people in their communities with the help of generous donors on the Treasure Coast. And whereas each year the American Red Cross of the Treasure Coast responds to disasters, including house or apartment fires, hurricanes, and other natural and human-caused disasters. And whereas American Red Cross prepares people to save lives through first aid and CPR training, water safety, and the use of automated external defibrillators to save victims of sudden cardiac arrest. Over the past year, hundreds of people have enrolled in the American Red Cross health and safety courses on the Treasure Coast. And whereas American Red Cross staff members deploy with our armed forces to provide emergency communications and a caring presence to servicemen and women separated from their families. The American Red Cross of the Treasure Coast also reaches out to the members of the National Guard and Reserves and their families. And whereas without the help of the volunteers, the American Red Cross of the Treasure Coast would not be able to fulfill the humanitarian mission that is the cornerstone of the organization. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board recognizes March 2008 as American Red Cross Month. Especially during this extraordinary time for our country, all residents are encouraged to support this organization's noble humanitarian mission. Adopted this 4th day of March 2008, signed by all 5 county commissioners. And Sarah?
Thank you. Yes, the Red Cross is the organization that takes your compassion and donations and turns them into immediate action. With only 89 days until hurricane season, we're out there getting everyone prepared. Last year, we gave over 70,000 residents hurricane information in conjunction with Hometown News, and we plan on doing that again this year. We were able to help 40 individuals who lost their homes due to house fires. That represented 10 families and more than $10,000 in immediate aid that we gave. As you mentioned, first aid, CPR, water safety training, all those are available. Our facilities are right across the street. We encourage all of you to come and visit and see what we have to be ready for hurricane season, and we thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. We enjoy always working jointly with you.
Thank you.
We have another proclamation recognizing April 6, 2008 as Parents and Children's Day in Indian River County. And I've asked Commissioner Wesley Davis to read this, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, a proclamation declaring Parents and Children's Day in Indian River County, Florida. Whereas the 13th Annual Children's Week celebrating parents and children will take place in Tallahassee from March 30 to April 6, 2008. Bringing thousands of parents, children, professionals, community leaders, and concerned citizens together to share valuable knowledge and information about children's issues. And whereas the purpose of Children's Week is to create a shared vision of the state of Florida's commitment to its children and families, and to engage a long-term process to develop and implement strategies for moving the shared vision forward, and does so by encouraging Children's Week activities in all Florida counties. And whereas Children's Week has teamed up with the Association of Early Learning Coalition, Florida Department of Health, Prevent Child Abuse Florida, and dozens of leading statewide nonprofit organizations to expand the network of community involvement on a wide array of children and family issues at the local level. And whereas the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee counties is one of 31 early learning coalitions in the state of Florida, legislatively mandated to manage and oversee state and federal funded education, care, and programs in Indian River County so that children will have optimal health, education, and care they need to promote early learning so that they can be successful in school and life. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners that April 6, 2008 is Parents and Children's Day in Indian River County, Florida. Further, the board commends the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee counties for their continuing commitment to the nurturing and well-being of this region's children. Duly adopted this 4th day of March 2008, signed by all 5 county commissioners.
Thank you. And we have a group. Come forward.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Klein, and I'm the Executive Director of the Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee counties, and we're proud and honored to serve so many children here in Indian River. I'd like to introduce to you our Chairman of the Board, Filiberto Valero, as well as there's a few board members here. We have both Cheryl Dunn and Valerie are here, as well as 2 staff members, and perhaps we could just tell you for a moment what we do here in Indian River County. We'd like to do that.
Thank you. You see, it's exactly what I always wanted to wear today. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
The Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee County, we were founded in 1998, and since 2005, we serve families and children in the Indian River County. Today, we serve close to 1,700 children in this county, and we do this through our federal, state, and local funding, as well as private funding. Through the local providers, we are sure to ensure that the nurturing of our children is the best that we can offer to children from birth to 5 years old. So we are very happy to provide this service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any one of you would like to address the board? Hi. Thank you.
Good morning, Pat Houston, Director of Programs, and we do a local initiative in Indian River County where we're doing open houses with our child care centers during a week in April. We chose that as opposed to Tallahassee's week because that's spring break and our child care centers largely aren't operating, normally. And we'll get you information as to what dates we have the open houses. And then our Executive Director will be speaking of children's initiatives in Tallahassee during Children's Week. So we're trying to move forward the important items in this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I also will be in Tallahassee advocating and beating the drum for children next week as all those legislators get back to work, and we want them to continue funding at the same rate that they have been, and we know how important these programs are for our kids. So thank you for this proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good to see you.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you. Keep up the work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for the work.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. You want a group shot with your groups? Okay, yes, you can.
I love your necklace.
Love your necklace. Or whatever you call it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Cheryl.
They want a group shot.
Do they?
Yes.
Okay. She's all got one. Okay. We have a presentation announcing City of Fellsmere 97th birthday party. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Polly Coe. I'm chairperson for the Fellsmere Beautification Committee. The Beautification Committee is the sponsor of Fellsmere Day. This is our 97th birthday celebration this year. By coincidence, April the 5th is the actual exact 97th anniversary of the incorporation of Fellsmere in 1911. This year we're having all-you-can-eat pancake breakfast, booths, singing, parade, bed race. I don't think you see any other bed races around here.
Not like Fellsmere's.
Yes. Little Miss Fellsmere pageant, and entertainment. We plan to party from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, maybe later. We would like to invite all of the Board of County Commissioners to come and participate with a booth, in the parade, in the bed race.
You got a bed?
Any way you want to do it.
I can't compete in that. I mean, it's just incredible. That race is something to see, down Broadway.
Yes. I would like to invite all of you, all the employees of Indian River County, and all of the residents of Indian River County to come out and help us celebrate. We would welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coe. And she's right. It is a wonderful celebration, and it's done with a lot of humor and a lot of fun, and it certainly will be a good time will be had by all.
From sun up to sundown.
From camp to camp.
Yep. Thank you for coming. Approval of minutes, Joint Public School Concurrency Workshop, January 13th, 2008.
Move
To approve. I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes, thank you. Regular School Board meeting, February 5th, 2008.
Move to second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes, thank you very much. Consent agenda. Anyone like to pull anything?
Madam Chair, I would like to pull K, T, and Y.
Anyone else? May I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes, thank you very much. K.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a final release of retainage, American Acquisition Group, their final work order, and they were hired for some right-of-way acquisition services, and apparently the contract has expired. And my only question on this was, looking at the completed work on this, it doesn't look like they completed a whole lot of what we hired them to do, and is that just because we don't need them any longer now, or
We
kind of looks
see
like
Mr. Davis coming forward and
they did not fulfill much of their contract obligation.
have an explanation, please.
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. AAG worked on several projects for the county regarding right-of-way acquisition. The one that they did complete was 41st Street, east of Kings Highway. Several of the other projects, particularly Kings Highway and State Road 60 intersection, and some of the other projects, the engineering was simply not far enough along in design for them to actually have all the information they needed to complete the right-of-way acquisition.
Okay, so are you satisfied with the work that they did do for us that we're paying them for?
Yes, I'm satisfied for the work that
they were contracted to acquire 24 parcels, and apparently we're not anywhere near that. But
right. Well, some of them were negotiated without going eminent domain. So several were negotiated, particularly the ones on 41st Street. The rest of them, the project just simply wasn't far enough along. We suspended the State Road 60 Kings Highway job to look for alternative routes to move traffic, so, you know, we could look at an option to not widen that intersection, but that wasn't fruitful.
okay, all right. And you're satisfied with the work they've done? This
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Move to approve staff recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes, thank you. Next, we have T.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is a approval of bid award for the Utilities Department for their warehouse stock. And my only question here, if Eric's here, is that there's just hundreds and hundreds and thousands of parts here that we're purchasing for the almost $500,000. And just, do we have a good inventory system, Eric, to track all these parts and pieces? And if somebody needs a part, do they get a work order? Is it tracked? And do we have an inventory control on this?
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. The answer is yes. We have moved into a new utility operations center over there. Quite a bit of change has happened since we've moved over there. The test of that is whenever each year we audit the system, and part of the test audit is to go into the actual warehouse. The auditors come in and they actually ask for, we would like to see how many items you can count in bin this. And on the basis of that, we actually have to walk to that particular bin and track that against our warehouse inventory. And it's been absolutely amazing in that sense. Each of the items that we track in are basically logged. They're given a digit number on it, so we actually do it on a scanner basis. It's a pretty complete system that we match back and forth, but the test of it is when we actually audit it.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you. Move to approve item T.
Second.
Any discussion? I would like to suggest that anyone who hasn't visited these facilities, it might be very beneficial to see some of the facilities we have and how they operate. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And why?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the Veterans Council of Indian River County, their annual financial audit, and staff is recommending that we do not grant an extension for the audit and withhold any reimbursements. And just the one question I have, is this going to impact the council from supplying any of the needed services for the veterans if we take this action?
Let me say that we have to do this. You're the only one that can make the exception. We have a written policy that says any agency that receives over $25,000 in funding does not give us an audit within 120 days after the end of their fiscal year, we suspend their funding and the reimbursement. We cannot make the exception. That's why we put it on the agenda for any agency that doesn't meet that, but the commission can. Staff does not have the ability, if you so wish to do, keep funding them, you can, but staff does not have that authority, and that's why it's here today.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to deny any of the services to the veterans while they work out their audit. So I don't know, maybe Mr. Matthews, would you like to address, or?
Good morning. We have a
morning.
name for the record.
Thank you on behalf of veterans for all you do for transportation to Veterans Hospital. We appreciate all your efforts. We really want results and not excuses, but we do have some extenuating circumstances that took place. One thing, we changed our election day from March to September, and that gave us less time to get started. Secondly, we do an internal audit, and we did get the results of that in September, and it raised some questions that we needed to get further, dwell into deeper. Some of the material asked for was not available, and we're still working on that. Mr. John Matthews Michaels was the internal audit person, past president, a fellow combat veteran, and he'll explain some things to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Stanley, the president of the Veterans Council, had invited me to come this morning. My name is John Matthews, and I'm the past president of the Veterans Council. I'd like to begin by thanking you for your interest in our veterans. We truly appreciate the financial support that Indian River County has provided and continues to provide for transporting veterans to the VA medical facility in West Palm Beach. I was the chair of the Veterans Council Internal Audit Committee this year. We began our audit in August and completed it shortly after September 30th, 2007. We made an interim report to the Veterans Council at its September meeting and our final report at the October meeting. The Audit Committee did not have possession or control over the actual hard copies of the financial records for the previous year. We worked from the QuickBooks file provided to us by the Veterans Council outside bookkeeper. We did have several questions and some suggestions and requested clarification from the previous president and treasurer on several occasions. After the transition to the current officers and a follow-up meeting of the Audit Committee, we turned the QuickBooks file and our committee reports over to the CPA. This entire process was done later in the year than usual due to a recent bylaws change that pushed the council's election from spring to the September meeting. The CPA is working on the full audit and has assured us that it will be completed soon. In the meantime, we would like to request that the county authorize the release of that portion of the budgeted funds necessary to pay the van drivers who are transporting veterans to the West Palm Beach VA facility on a daily basis. We're proud of the work that our Veterans Council does, and we're grateful for the support of Indian River County.
Mr. Matthews, do you anticipate that the audit will be completed? You're asking for an extension until April 1st. Will the audit be completed at that date?
Yes, sir. I spoke to him yesterday, and he had emailed me. I was out of town, but he had emailed a few questions. They need some copies of minutes and a few things, 6 or 8 things that I think we can provide them within a week or so, and then I anticipate him having it within the month.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Matthews, Michaels. John Michaels Matthews.
Excuse me.
It's got the
John Michael Matthews.
I get so. What you're asking for is alternative number 1 versus any reimbursements. You just like to scratch that and just put in just driver's reimbursements.
Well, yes, sir. The county, the budget that we get from the county basically pays for the transportation of the veterans to the VA hospital, and it's drivers and a little bit more, but all of that is intact, and there is no problem with that. There's really the other part is money that we use to raise to buy new vans and fundraisers, and some of that is what we're auditing. But the money that the county provides is intact. The services is going on a daily basis. We just need to make sure and keep our drivers paid so they can continue to drive.
And if we do just reimburse the drivers, we will be able to provide the services to our veterans. Am I hearing you say that?
I'd prefer that we just said if we're going to do that, legally allowable expenses, because we may look at an expense and get an argument that's an indirect expense affiliated. If we're going to give them a extension, which I don't have a problem just making any legally reimbursable expense, because it'd be a lot easier for us. We may look at an expense that we don't see to be a direct and get it in a
Madam Chair, I'd just like to go ahead and move to accept alternative 1 by staff, which is to approve the extension.
And I'll second that.
And pay any reimbursement.
As written, any reimbursements, correct?
Expense reimbursements, yeah.
Okay. Any and all, I most certainly would not want to see any unforeseen circumstances to interfere with the services, the very much needed services for the veterans, especially due to the fact that you've had a change in meeting times and election of officers, and I don't think that should get in the way with what we need to do for our veterans.
No, sir. Things are, we've rewritten the bylaws, the meetings, things are going better than ever, and we anticipate this the services improving and the efficiency improving.
Good. Thank you for coming this morning and laying it all out. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. Public items, public hearings, Board of Consideration to approve purchase of the Jones Pier site under the County Environmental Lands Program, memorandum dated February 26, 2008, 270 to 355. This is administration. Good morning, Bob and Rolla.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, County Commission. This is a public hearing for the board to consider purchase of what's known as the Jones's Pier property under the County Environmental Lands Acquisition Program. Now, the subject property is located about 2 miles south of County Road 510 or Wabassa Bridge Road along Historic Jungle Trail. To the north of it is Palm Island Plantation residential development. To the south and east is the River Club at Carlton. It's in an area of residential development, one of the few remaining undeveloped privately owned properties along Jungle Trail. The property is about 16.5 acres in size. This picture on the overhead gives kind of some background of it. You can kind of look at it in two main parts. You have the about 2.5 acres along the Jungle Trail itself, the homestead, where there are historic structures and historic uses and residence, which includes a 1920s residence which the Joneses still live in, a cottage. There's the historic Jones's Pier, which the property is named after, which has been on the property since early on in the 1900s. It's currently still in use as a stopover location for travelers of the Intercoastal Waterway. There's also some other structures associated with the homestead. The eastern 14 or so acres is currently in a palm nursery use. It's previously was planted in citrus, and just historically it was part of the Jones's homestead used for growing crops and for agriculture. That's very unique about this property, first of all, Jungle Trail is on the National Register of Historic Places. It's a state recognized greenway. It has historic history. It's been designated a scenic historic road by Indian River County. The Joneses Pier property is essentially an integral part of that overall history. The Joneses is one of the few families that have been on a property for more than 100 years. The Joneses moved to this property in 1889, so essentially the family's been out there for over 118 years. So it is a very unique part of Indian River County's history. Just have a few pictures to show some of the structures on the property. Here we have the actual Joneses Pier. Again, there's a history in and of itself. Mr. Jones has kept logs of visitors to the property over the years, and it is still used for overnight travelers of the Intercoastal. There's also a single-family dock that's accessory to a cottage that's also on the river frontage. There's about 335 feet of river frontage on the property. This is a picture of the homestead built in the 1920s. Again, it's still being used and occupied, and as you can see, it's very well maintained, and it is currently functioning as a residence. Some of the other accessory structures, there are certain structures that were built on the property over time. For example, there's a garage that was built in the 1970s. There are other sheds and barn structures that were built in various time frames throughout the 1900s, some in the 40s. And here's just some of the pictures of some of the outbuildings. And here's a view of the 14 acres. Again, it's currently an active palm nursery. The Joneses have worked with the Kennedy Groves family to establish this palm nursery. It keeps the property in agricultural use, and it helps the Joneses with their agricultural tax exemption, but it is an active palm nursery currently. As far as the proposals before you today, the negotiated purchase price is $8 million. This is a 16.5 acre property, so that translates to approximately $485,000 per acre. This is in a location with very high-end real estate opportunities for development. We do have an active Florida Communities Trust grant in hand for the 45% funding. If you factor in acquisition costs, the grant estimate is about $3.65 million. And that would essentially result in, with the benefit of that grant, the county bond expenditure of its local bond funds would be about $4.5 million. As far as the status of current bond funds, I just want to give you a brief overview. Right now, well, as of actually January 31st, the cash balance of the county's environmental land bond funds was about $6.8 million. The county has committed up to $700,000 towards the Fellsmere Preserve project. That is moving forward, so that's anticipated that will be spent towards that project. So that brings us to a cash balance of about $6.1 million. We do have some FCT grants that are either in process of being reimbursed or are anticipated based on some good projects we've had. What we call the South Prong Preserve, we have that grant in hand, and we should be getting those funds back in the next couple months of about $1.4 million. There's the Archie Smith Fish House. It's on a contingency funding list with the state, so there's a good chance we'll get that money back in the near future. And then we have the Sebastian Harbor Preserve, which was an expensive property. Staff's position is it's a very good FCT project. We're going to be submitting it this current cycle that's just opened up. We expect to get $6.6 million back from that project. Those funds, however, just based on the cycle of the grant, we wouldn't be getting those back for about a year from now. So that's the one drawback with that reimbursement. If you do account for the anticipated reimbursements that we currently expect, that's about 8.6 million, which would bring back the total about 14.7. So we're dealing with two circumstances. We're dealing with the cash balance at hand versus, and we have to consider the delay in the reimbursements we're expecting. Let's see. There are a couple of issues I'd like to point out, or aspects of the negotiation we had to deal with when we were working with the Joneses on this proposal. One is the tree farm or the palm nursery on the eastern 14 acres. As part of this process, we've also negotiated arrangements with the Kennedy Groves representatives, and under this arrangement, the tree farm, if the county proceeds with purchase, that would be either ceased or removed within a year after closing, and whatever wasn't removed, the county would inherit those palm trees after that time frame. The other point I want to make is the caretaker's agreement. One of the conditions in working with the Joneses on this proposal is that Mr. Jones in particular wanted to live and still wants to live out his life on the property. So as part of this proposal, Mr. Jones would reside on the property for the duration of his life as a caretaker for the property. As far as, and that would be, for example, upkeep of the homestead area, use of and still logging and overseeing the marina use and those aspects. There is an opportunity for the county to terminate that agreement if there was duties that were unfulfilled. The other point I want to make are the appraisals that were gotten for the property. There are actually 4 appraisals done. Initially, the county obtained 2 appraisals under our procedures because the property value is over $500,000, and we proceeded with that approach. We also, under the initial direction to the 2 appraisers, we looked into life estate values under that premise, but that evolved into a caretaker agreement, which is less of it's more of a private, a public benefit arrangement where Mr. Jones serves as caretaker versus the private benefit of a life estate, and that wasn't working with FCT on what they would or would not accept under their grant program. The other point I want to make is when we did do the first 2 appraisals, we did also look at the opportunity to get values for just the 2.5 acre homestead versus the whole property to see if that was an opportunity for the county to consider just purchasing the riverfront 2.5 acres. As negotiations evolved, however, that opportunity to work with the Joneses waned, and at this point, and as proposed, the Joneses are only willing to sell the total property. So the values we have are for the total fee simple purchase of the 16.5 acres. Now, the Florida Communities Trust has reviewed the appraisals, and under their own process, they hire their own review appraiser, which is one of the 4 appraisals I refer to. And in doing so, FCT established what they call a maximum approved purchase price of $8.13 million. So, in essence, the negotiated purchase price of $8 million is 98% of the state's approved value for purposes of their grant program. We did talk to FCT about getting updates to the appraisals. These appraisals, because of the complications of the negotiations and just the duration it took to do it, the appraisals are somewhat stale. They were obtained in late 2006. But when we go with FCT, based on the appraisals and their review, they were confident in the value as being reasonable, and they essentially recommended against updates for mostly the fact that this is a grant that they issued back in late 2005, and they've been extending it, working with the county on keeping the grant alive. And at this point, they have faith that the values of these 4 appraisal reviews is representative of the property value. So from that perspective, we're bringing this to you and moving it forward with the appraisals that we obtained back at that time. Next, we're showing on the overhead is a kind of a conceptual use plan that is proposed for the property. Essentially, the riverfront, jungle trail front, 2.5 acre homestead. Again, it would be a caretaker's use during the duration of Mr. Jones's life. In the future, after that, the concept is that the homestead would be conserved as a visitor center, museum. The county would work with Historical Society on staffing the museum. There's a cottage on the front of the property that would be used as a caretaker's residence. That could be either a county employee or a sheriff's deputy. The piers themselves, the concept is that the piers would become opportunities for boaters to visit the property and dock at the property. There's also opportunity for use of the piers as fishing piers. There would be trails proposed. The eastern 14 acres, it's conceived that would be restored over time with native plantings. There's a pond that would be proposed for stormwater and also just aesthetic purposes, outdoor pavilion, and essentially an opportunity for parking along Jungle Trail, which is currently lacking for public access. As far as estimates of management and development costs, as part of this process of working with the state and for county purposes, we have developed an initial draft management plan which includes certain anticipated costs. For resource management, these would include assessment of the property, of resources, opportunities for restoration, and including restoration plantings. The estimated initial cost for that is about $110,000. There's also public access improvements, as I mentioned, for development of the trail, certain improvements, parking estimates were about $83,000, and that brings you up just under $200,000. As far as annual operating costs, under normal operating costs, the estimates came up with about $7,500. One of the notes on that, though, however, that doesn't account for any type of cost that might come up once we are into the management mode of the property, such as structural repair, if there's a storm, things like that. So this is not a catch-all of all costs of the county. And one of the points I want to make, and this was a point of the Land Acquisition Committee, which I'll get into, is some of the concern about the ongoing management costs. And as you may know from past discussions on this, the county's environmental land bond funds can be used for initial restoration and initial improvements, but they cannot be used for ongoing management costs. So that's a funding that the county would have to determine to come from some other source. This did go through the county's Land Acquisition Advisory Committee on February 13th. And the committee voted 10-7 to support the purchase. So there was some discussion of the issues, and those who voted for the purchase essentially focused on the public benefits and unique aspects of the property. It is, again, one of the last undeveloped private riverfront properties on Jungle Trail. It would result in preservation of essentially an iconic historic homestead that's integral to the county's history. There's an opportunity for public river access, and of course we do have the 45% state funding grant in hand that we would essentially forfeit if the county chooses not to proceed with the purchase. Those voting against the purchase on the committee were focusing, again, I'm paraphrasing, this is my take of it, is they're focusing on the restoration and ongoing management costs, which I previously referenced. Also, now that we're getting down to some of the, we do have a list of projects we're getting down to funding being used up. they're more focused these days, in particular, on the use of funds, and this would be a significant portions of those funds. So that's generally the summary. Staff's recommendation is that the commission approve the purchase contingent upon the FCT funding and authorize staff to proceed with due diligence and closing. One final point I want to make is under county and state statute procedures, in this case, the negotiated purchase price exceeds the average of the appraisals used to determine the value, and as such, it will take what's called an extraordinary or supermajority vote of the commission to pass or approve the purchase. And thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this point? Yes?
Yeah. Currently, this property is within unincorporated Indian River County, and I think it has a land use designation of L1, which is 3 units per acre. Bob, if somebody were to come develop the property, two parts. One is what would kind of be the build-out at that land use designation, given our requirements for road and buffers and stuff. And two, do our ordinances have any protection for historical homes, if they have to be preserved on site or anything like that?
I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. In answer to your last question first, no, the county doesn't have any prohibition of raising historic structures. We have a historic preservation chapter in our land development regulations, and it has mostly some timing related requirements relating to historic structures, but no prohibition against removing them. Regarding developing this property, it would be a challenge developing it because Jungle Trail is not paved. Development would require paved access. The county's position has always been not to pave Jungle Trail. The thinking in the past has been that if this property came in for development, it would probably best be developed by being annexed into the town of Indian River Shores, and we always anticipated that maybe the back 14 acres would be either purchased by the Parm Island Club or the River Club at Carlton and incorporated into their development. And I think the way their developments are laid out, that area could be incorporated within it. But there would be some challenges developing it as a separate tract.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fletcher?
Nothing at this time.
Davis? Okay, we'll open this to the public hearing. This is a public hearing. We have two podiums, one on each side, and if you'd please come to the podium and state your name. The public hearing is now open. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I have a very soft voice.
No, we can.
Yes.
My name is Diane Bickart, and I am the oldest niece of Milton and Mary Jones. I would like to take a few moments to tell you about the Jones homestead and what it has meant to my family, especially my Aunt Mary and Uncle Milton. My great-grandfather came down the Intracoastal to the Indian River in 1889. At that time, this part of Florida was considered very undesirable. I know that's hard to believe now. There was encouragement from the government to settle what most referred to as swampland. My uncle still jokes about going outside in the early days and shooting a hole through the mosquitoes so that they could see the sun. It's no exaggeration to say that it took both courage and cunning when my family first came to settle this part of Florida. Originally, the Jones homestead consisted of 160 acres. Now, 119 years later, only a little over 16 acres remain. It is a slice of time and place that most of Florida has forgotten. Growing up, I was taught to appreciate that the homestead was a part of Florida's early history, and it was with reservations that I watched as things all around the homestead changed. The coast to which my mother used to bicycle when she was a young woman is now mile after mile of condominiums. They're beautiful, yes, but not what we had known and loved. For my family, there is and always has been something mystical about the Jones homestead. My mother and I moved from Vero when I was 4 years old to follow my dad, who was a glider pilot in World War II until he went overseas. But it has always been a special place to come back to. Change came later to this part of Florida than it did in some other parts, and I have been lucky to be able to come home to this place from time to time throughout my life. I remember so many stories that my mother told about growing up on the homestead, going to school by boat, my grandfather's oyster beds, having the first car on the island, the special quality in Orchid Island grapefruit. So many things. It is no wonder that my mother and my aunt, identical twins, and my uncle's older sisters ask us to spread their ashes at the place they love so much. We have a very small family, and Uncle Milton and Aunt Mary were never blessed with children. Unfortunately, the time has come when it is no longer possible for the Jones homestead to stay in the family. I've always wished that something could be done to hang on to what to me is such a special place and that I don't want to see change. I truly appreciate the interest the county and the Conservation Fund have shown in the property and hope that this little part of Florida can be preserved as a reminder of how things used to be. I would like at this time to explain to you, as I understand, the county's position regarding the purchase of the Jones homestead. After various appraisals, the price arrived at is $8 million. The county would pay 55% of the $8 million, or $4.4 million. And the Conservation Fund would pay 45%, or $3.6 million. I know this is repetitive, but I want to be sure I understand myself. The Conservation Fund financially assists communities all over the United States in the preservation of historical lands. Many of us are concerned that perhaps our country may be headed into recession. Also, the voters of Florida passed the $50,000 homestead exemption, and jobs are being lost due to this. Indian River County has a bond fund set up that is not affected by either of the aforementioned. This fund is specifically for the conservation of land. Also, the Conservation Fund, which is offering 45% of the money to purchase the Jones homestead, is not interested in any property in this area other than the total 16 acres of the Jones homestead. I asked the County Commission and Matt Saxton, Vice President of the Conservation Fund, if this is correct. Is that all correct?
Matt Sexton with the Conservation Fund. Just the one correction, the funds are from the Florida Communities Trust Program, not from the Conservation Fund.
Okay. Thank you. My family invites all of you to visit the Jones homestead and take a step back in time. My uncle, who will be 89 on March 8th, has never left the homestead except to serve his country during World War II. For 59 years, my Aunt Mary has been at his side. Should the county decide not to purchase this land for historical preservation, it will go on the market for between $10 and $12 million. Even with this financial disadvantage to us, our family much prefers this land to be preserved as a part of Florida history. I thank the County Commission for the time you have allowed me.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak to this issue? Please come to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Beadle, and I was born and raised in Vero Beach. My grandparents on both my mother's and my father's side were settlers on Johns Island, and my dad was born on Jungle Trail, just north of the Jones property. And I spent my years growing up boating and fishing and riding the Jungle Trail all the way up to Sebastian Inlet and dune buggies, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. And I want that, a semblance of that for the children and the future generations of this community to enjoy. You have a unique opportunity today to purchase a unique piece of property and a unique piece of history, and I urge you to do so, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Honorable Chairman, Board, staff members, my name is Gregory Garcia. I had the pleasure of knowing the Joneses for the past 15 years. I also had the pleasure of living in that cottage for almost 10 of those. I believe this is a very unique opportunity for the citizens of Indian River County as well as the visitors. I would like to, for the record, and I trust you guys already realize most of this, but for the record, I'd like to point out a few things as far as some of the newspaper articles that are slightly inaccurate. The entire property is a historical site. Regardless of what was planted on it, it is all one thing that has been in one family for the entire 119 years. There's no desire for the Joneses had no desire to see the property separated out. They wanted to see a park, something that the public could enjoy in the future. There have been discussions about the back of the property and its restoration. I'd like to see it as an oak hammock as well. I think that would be very beautiful. But I also know even in its present condition, there's nothing like it in Indian River County to walk back there and look up and see the sky, see the animals that are still nesting in the trees in that windbreak. There's any number of large oaks there. We had a gentleman who stopped there one time that was a horticulturalist from Gainesville. He said the oak tree just to the south side of the house was a sapling when the Spaniards landed. He said the one where the swing hangs was a sapling when the Civil War was fought. This has been out there for all these years, and it's important to preserve these things. I'd like to go down a few other things that may not be readily apparent. The property has been used in numerous movies. There was one that was called with Twiggy in it, and Jim Backus, and Tommy Smothers, and Here Comes the Bride. They actually filmed the wedding scene at the end of that movie on the property, looking from the southwest, or from the southeast to the northwest. It has been used in numerous ads for Timberland shoes and Sperry topsiders because of its ruggedness and its pioneer heritage. They like doing their ads there and saying their shoes were just as tough as the property and the people who settled it. We have a Century Pioneer Family designation already. I've already talked to a few people as far as making sure that if it becomes a park, that there will be a national register of historic places on the house, and also a Florida Trails designation with the history of the family on it as well. Everyone who has ever walked down that trail, and again, I lived there for almost 10 years, have all said that this is worth preserving. When mentioned about the possibility of being a park, they were all in favor of it. I never heard a single negative about this becoming a park. All recognize its value. The appraised value is what it's being sold for, not its market value. Believe me, it's well worth more than the $8 million that's being spent for it. Also, I'd like to point out that as a bird and wildlife, they seek it out. We have purple martins that come there. There have been painted buttons that have come there for years. Again, there's only a few places left on the island for the native inhabitants, if you will, to come and be able to raise their families. And I'd like to see that this be one of them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Christine Flagler, and I am a newer resident of the area. I live on Morningside Trail, which is next to the Jones property. And I'd like to read a letter that I was writing for the editor of the newspaper. I was very pleased to read about the County Advisory Committee's recommendation to purchase the Jones property along Jungle Trail and to make it into a museum and a coastal hammock restoration area. The county has a unique opportunity to add to the value of this county, where so much of the natural environment has been bulldozed to provide luxury housing. And I'd like to speak to the economic value, because I think that's a lot of the objection here. I have 2 family members and 3 friends who are looking to buy existing houses in this area, and they're looking for places where the government has demonstrated a commitment not only to city parks but to natural areas and to the restoration of something like the hammocks here. The restoration would help reverse the overuse of the island, lowering the carbon footprint and the use of resources for human consumption. My husband and I walk daily in the Captain Forster Hammock Park off of Jungle Trail. It is one very narrow piece of natural area with development close by on each side. The Jones property would give a larger area for native species of plants and animals to return and flourish. This land had once so many species of orchids on it that it was called Orchid Isle. It now has become so developed that most of the residents don't ever even see an orchid growing naturally here on the island. I urge you to vote in support of this hammock restoration project and return the orchids to Orchid Isle. And I'm not all that familiar with restoration of hammocks, coastal hammocks, but I do know about the prairie restoration movement in the north, in the Chicago area, where many, many thousands of acres have been returned to prairie, and the property values have definitely gone up. The tax base has gone up. So if there are financial objections to this, I'd like to speak to the advantages to the county of restoring this coastal hammock. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tom Hughes, and I'm really new to the area, I guess, only about 12, 14 years. And I want to thank the board and everyone in the local government for making this place the paradise that it is. And the ongoing attempts like this to protect what we have for future generations. I'm here because I've had the privilege of walking the trail often over these last 12, 14 years, and had occasion to sit under the oak tree with Mr. Jones. And if you could ever picture talking to the earth, that's what talking to Mr. Jones is. And if there's a counterweight to make this happen, just talk to Mr. Jones and let him tell you something about the history of this place and his life experience. And by the way, it's all documented too. As you probably know, there's tons of documentation, books of all the boats that came here over the years, and on and on and on. So this is not only special for us and our generation, but for future generations. It's not going to be an opportunity in the future. It's never going to happen again. There's nothing else like it. Kids can come in big boats and learn not only about the river, but about the farming history. And I'll go as far as respect for the elderly and the people that made this happen for us. So I hope that you consider all this when the decision is made. I love the area. I'm pretty confident the right decision is going to be made, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Keith Thompson. I'm a longtime Barrier Island resident. I walk on Jungle Trail virtually every day, and it's very noticeable as I walk from 510 all the way to Old Winter Beach Road that there's virtually no green space with the exception of the Captain Forester Preserve. All of the land along Jungle Trail is either developed or scheduled to be developed. Acquisition of this property would preserve part of our history, the history of Jungle Trail, which really is an important part of the history of Indian River County. It would also ensure that there is additional river access for the public, which is very scarce along the intercoastal waterway. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today, and I would strongly urge you to vote in favor of this land acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Bill Haggerty, and where I live backs onto Mr. Jones's property. I'm concerned about two things about the county's acquisition of the property. You mentioned to increase the public river access. How do you propose to do this? Put a dock there that people can put boats in? Then you're going to double your problem with parking. I don't understand how that's going to happen within the development of the property. It needs to be bought. It needs to be left pretty much as it is, because I've lived there for 18 and a half years, and the amount of wildlife in the area has gone down to maybe 5% of what it was. It's really, really bad. This is your opportunity. Please do. You should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Morning. My name is Garrett Donlin, and I own and live at 1010 Morningside Drive. Our property abuts the Jones Farm, and I have been a winter resident of Vero for the past 15 years. My profession for the past 40 years is builder-developer. I am speaking today for the preservation of the Jones property, not because I am adverse to development, but because I recognize the historical significance of this pioneer farm. What makes this farm special is that not only is it the last of the 11 farms that made up this area, but is a perfect example of the mix of commercial fishing and farming that the pioneers needed to survive. The history of our area is as much about the river as it is about the land, and Jones Farm was the pioneer hub. Everything that went on or off of Orchid Island went through the Jones Dock until the first Vero Bridge was built in 1920. Steam paddle-wheeled ships carried the commerce on the river from Titusville to West Palm, and the Orchid Island citrus, acknowledged as the best in the world, was loaded here. I can easily imagine the existing structures restored to their past as museums to tell the tales of gill nets, cast nets, citrus and produce, giant loggerheads, robin stew, and dolphin steaks. The Jones property is perfectly positioned on the south end of the historic Jungle Trail to complement the Pelican Island National Park on the north end. One of my favorite Florida books is a historical novel by Patrick Smith, A Land Remembered. I'm convinced that this property is a big part of that history that needs to be remembered. I believe that the Jones Pioneer Farm is a priceless educational opportunity, and I humbly implore this board to act to procure, preserve, and protect this historical treasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Richard M. Jones. I've been on Jungle Trail. I just want to give you a little account of my life. A lot has been said here today, and I appreciate all that's been said and your attendance and what the judgment will be. I am a veteran of the Second World War. I'm a disabled American veteran, and I want to see this piece of property given or sold to this county. It will leave me a heritage, which I am very, very proud to have. I just want to thank you for coming, all you people, and the group is here. Especially I want to thank Mr. O'Brien here for coming to visit with me, and I want to thank each and every one of you, and I would appreciate deep consideration for what's been said here. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lenora Mustapik, and I too am a native. And you know, as a child, I played games on Jungle Trail and was offered fruit and coconuts by Mr. Jones, and he doesn't remember that, I'm sure. But anyway, I also played another game, and it was called the game of Monopoly, which I'm sure everyone in this room has at least been familiarized with. For this is how I review this whole matter. The purchase of Mr. and Mrs. Jones's property, the plat of land, is a purchase by this county, and I see it, that little plat of land as Park Place on the board of Indian River County. I guess my question is, the developers already own Boardwalk, is how I see it. My question is here today, can we afford not to purchase Park Place? Mr. and Mrs. Jones has given us a generous opportunity at a discounted price. It would be a strategic move to save a large slice of not just preserve and wildlife, but a way of life. The historic beginning of a pioneer mentor that has showed our community that selling to the highest bidder may not always be the best choice for all. And I'd like to thank this community for supporting Mr. Jones, and thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Jens Tripson, 2525 14th Street, Vero Beach. I'd encourage the county to go ahead with purchase of this property. I would like to suggest, because of the historical agricultural use that went on here for the last 119 years, that if there's any way, if it doesn't interfere with getting the matching funds and that kind of thing, that we keep that 14 acres in agriculture. I realize it's a tree farm now, and that's not as historic as Orchid Island citrus and vegetables, but at least until funds become available, it might provide a little bit of money for leasing the property to Mr. Kennedy or somebody interested in the palms. And it may come down that at some point we could plant citrus there again, at least as a showcase for what developed this county. So purchase the land, please.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Ruth Stanbridge at 4835 66th Avenue. I'm the county historian, former county commissioner, and I now serve on the governing board of the Florida Community Trust in Tallahassee. And want to tell you from day one, this property has been very valuable of the 119 years to Indian River County. Of course, we were Brevard at that time. In the 1980s, we set out to save Jungle Trail, which we did, which is a greenway. Took 15 years for the National Register. It will take about 2 months to get Mr. Jones' property on the National Register. I have talked with him and Greg over the years, and we will be putting a National Historic Landmark sign on there, which garners a lot of interest when you go after grants. I want to encourage you to continue the legacy that you're leaving for Indian River County citizens and the generations to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Any other speakers want to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions of staff remaining?
I have some questions.
Yes.
How many parking spots are going to be available for the river access? I know I see where there's parking spots for the visitor center and that, but as far as the actual river access for people to be able to join family or friends that may be already in the area of the Narrows in a boat, be able to park there, get picked up. How many spots are we talking about?
That's really a county decision. There's no real limitation through the grant that we're working. I think right now we're conceiving just a limited amount for the visitation, but if that's something that the commission feels would serve a bigger purpose to make it expanded, I think right now it's fairly limited. That's really to about 6 or so spaces, but if this commission sees a value in a bigger parking area, there's opportunity for that.
Personally, I would. I had the opportunity to go to travel this on Sunday afternoon from the riverside just to look at it and to examine it. And much like Mr. Jones, I've come from a family that's 1895, had the opportunity to go through the 1895 freeze, and that's really how we wind up being here. And the historical significance, I do understand. In fact, growing up there, I had the opportunity to, my mom would drop me off there, quite frankly, during the summertime. We'd fish there all summer long, and she'd pick me up after work and my brother up. We never had the $3, though, to make it out on Jones's Pier to fish. We always had to fish just north of that.
Did you catch any fish?
Oh, yes, yes. And we knew better than to even ask for the $3. But it was certainly, and I do understand, but really, From the public access side of this, I really need to see more utility for me to support the purchase. And I need to see more public utility out of it. I know that goes against some of the individuals that have spoke here today. But this is, the water access is important, the historical significance I understand. But I want to see maximum public access for this, for the public to be able to utilize this piece of property in an area that truly is a special gem. Now, if we can accomplish that, I may consider it.
Any other? Mr. Wheeler?
One of the things I read in here, one of the long-range plans, I guess, is at some point in time you wouldn't allow dockage, overnight dockage. Bob, can you comment on that? Or
Yeah,
Roland?
these are the concepts that we're working on the draft management plan. One of the things is when we spend bond funds, we need to balance nonprofit use of the property. If overnight stay is something that the county wants to do as part of the amenity of the visit, I think there's an opportunity for that. But it would have to be a non-commercial type enterprise, and then funding would go back into the property. But again, there is that opportunity.
I'm sure there's going to be enough expense to maintain it. They could all go back into the property and there wouldn't be any profit. But that was, and I agree with what Commissioner Davis has said too. You know, I like the historical value. Like one gentleman spoke. I've read Patrick Smith's book twice. It's probably the best novel I've ever read, and I think that's a value. But I would like to see us get more use out of the property. I think if I was a very wealthy developer, I'd be happy to buy that property because of its location. But I don't know of the value other than historical and the riverfront at this point that benefits the county as a government. And but basically, I'd like to see a plan that would show us more so what this would benefit us in public access and how it would be used.
Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did take the opportunity to visit the property actually twice last week, and Mr. Jones was very kind enough to regale me with stories both times. Quite honestly, I'm struggling very hard with this decision. I love the historical portion of it, and would greatly like to see that part preserved. Sunday, I stood on Mr. Jones's dock and looking at it as a boater, as Commissioner Davis apparently did. And I struggled to find a reason why a boater would pull over there just to go to an old building. And I was trying to say, what would make a boater come in here from the public to stop and utilize the property? Both times I was on Jungle Trail, I drove by the Captain Forster Hammock Park, and both times the parking lot was empty. So I'm not sure another hammock park would satisfy the public. And the people I did see walking up and down Jungle Trail, either on their bikes or walking, I think they're there for the river view. And I tried to think what would make them leave the river view to walk back in the upland area. So I'm struggling with finding a good public use for this property, particularly the 14 eastern acres is where my biggest struggle is. A couple other things on the appraisals. There were 4 total appraisals. The first 2, one came in at $6.8 million, the other one was $8.3. So the county ordered a third appraisal done, and that came in at $7 million. And one of the things we discussed with the Land Acquisition Committee is we have 2 appraisals on the low end, $6.8 million, and one at $7 million. Why aren't we looking at that as the purchase price for this property? And I understand the FCT had approved the $8.1 million, but just because they approved a higher price, I'm not sure it's in the best interest of Indian River County taxpayers to go up to that price. As far as, there's some discussion about future development and impacts, and I think Bob Keating kind of made it clear that from the county's point of view, there would not really be feasible any development on this property. And to move it forward, it would have to be annexed into Indian River Shores and then part of an adjoining parcel. So I'm not sure there's a huge threat of development to this site. And I mentioned some of this, Mr. Jones, when we talked. and I would like to see the 2-acre historical parcel separated out. I think that would be a good use of county funds to preserve the historical aspect. I'm very concerned about the eastern 14 acres where we'd have to be spending a lot of tax dollars for restoration and improvements, and we're just getting tight on tax dollars. And we're going to have to be making decisions about what is needed in the county and what is wanted in the county when we have very limited funds coming forward. So I guess kind of where I'm leaning is, one, I'd like to just purchase the historical parcel, and if that isn't feasible, then certainly I think we should be looking more at the $7 million price tag instead of $8 million. That's just kind of where I'm.
All right, thank you. Mr. Flesher?
Madam Chair, thank you. And I appreciate everyone's input today. It was very well heartfelt, and I do share that great appreciation for this parcel of property. I don't have the luxury of owning a boat, so I could not do a boat buy or a drive-by. But it most certainly was one of the very first pieces of property that I viewed when I was here looking at property in Indian River County when I relocated. And it was about 13 years ago that my family and I had taken a ride down Jungle Trail, and it was a very different jungle trail. Not the preserved jungle trail, the jungle trail that you are at. And most certainly I saw a lot of people fishing, and I saw a lot of poles out in the water, and they were at the shoreline. And I said, wow, that is a beautiful sight. Here's a lot of people enjoying the river. And I too shared that luxury of grabbing a pole and fishing down by the river. And yes, that luxury is fast dried up with development. However, we do have that luxury on the other side of Jungle Trail and many other locations in Indian River County. I believe you have a beautiful site. I did not sit down and visit with you, Mr. Jones, but I have visited your site, and most certainly in recent times, looking at it in the same perspective that Commissioner Bryan has said, looking at a vision of what is the value for future generations? What can we put down to say that this is the best for the future of Indian River County? That this could be that polished diamond. It is most certainly a beautiful parcel of land and a diamond, so to speak. I do share a concern about the developed area and the mitigation that may take place to return it back to the culturally significant and historical value in which we are all perceiving and what has been portrayed today. Additionally, I do share a concern about the appraisal. It was mentioned about the market value as opposed to the appraised value. This appraisal is well over a year old, and I have some concerns about committing dollars to an appraisal that's well over a year old. I don't think that we would be viewing that commitment and in favorable light in any other purchase, and I think that we did recall other situations of purchases where we wanted to look at a fresher, more accurate appraisal, and I most certainly would want to see a fresher appraisal. Look, over the past year, many of our taxpayers have lost tens of thousands of dollars. Not lost because they have not been able to sell their homes. There are currently about 4,000 on the multiple listing today ready for sale. But they have been devalued, tens of thousands of dollars, and I can only imagine what the value that could be placed on this parcel of property now that was appraised well over a year ago at $8 million. I dare not wager what those numbers are, but I do have some concerns. Additionally, I believe that the $7,500 in annual maintenance and just to ensure that the parcel is where it stands now and what it is extremely conservative. We don't have a business plan to ensure a draw to this diamond other than the fact that the diamond exists. I do share some of the concerns that the dissenting parties did share during the land conservation meeting as far as the restoration costs and the management, as well as the fact that it does partake in a significant amount of the limited funds that are left, realizing that these funds are dedicated solely and surely for this purpose. I believe that we have to look at this in light of the current fiscal situation that we're in, as to be good stewards of all government spending. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a struggle and a very difficult situation when we purchase land, and I do share with you the love of the land and the joy of nature. And sometimes it takes vision, another 100 years, as your family has been on the land, to see what the land would look like in the neighborhood 100 years from now. And probably if we, even today, go up and down the East Coast, you're not going to find a hammock very often on the river. And I think this is a large price to pay today. Wasn't 2 years ago. But and I struggle to know the difference in our needs and our wants. And I think we all would love to have this piece of property for the future. And I think that I'm willing to pay the price. But we do have to have a management plan that we can afford. And we do have to have a management plan that meets the needs of our existing community and the future. That means the waterfront and the parking and other areas. Now this is because of the appraisal, this is a very difficult vote. It takes 4 yeses to make this happen. And listening to my fellow county commissioners, I don't see it right now. If we could take this back to staff and renegotiate downward at all, I think timing is everything, and I think that it's difficult to pay this price. I hear Mr. O'Brien struggling, and I see Mr. Fletcher struggling. I don't see Mr. Davis or Mr. Wheeler, unless I read them wrong,
No, I
completely struggling.
No,
but want it to happen, but just don't have complete yes votes. So I see issues up here completely. And so how do you want to make a motion or not make a motion? Or?
Well, I think that a lot of what Commissioner O'Brien said is really
valid.
And it's kind of where I was with it. I mean, I like the homestead. But I think that 2 acres with the waterfront, quite frankly, it would accomplish everything that I think we would like to accomplish in the area. That you could have the additional acreage, and I do have issues with that.
Right.
I do appreciate being able to purchase a historic property and then provide public access to water at the same time, and we have an opportunity to do that. But I'd like to find out from Mr. Sexton. He had mentioned that perhaps with the monies that's involved in this, how is us going back and reappraising this jeopardizing FCT dollars?
I spoke with the Florida Communities Trust Program this morning. In the past, they had first of all, let me say the Florida Communities Trust has gone above and beyond and out of the way to make sure that the grant funds are available for this project. They see this as a high priority at the state level And as such, this is the only project from the 2005 cycle that is still incomplete. They've extended it their normal. They can extend it up to 3 times, and then they've actually gone up beyond that and extended it more. So I think it's worth noting how generous Florida Communities Trust has been working with us and giving us time to work through this project. As you know, it's been a complex transaction. The actual land negotiation, we had to renegotiate the waiver of a right of first refusal and also the caretaker's agreement. And unfortunately, during that time, the real estate market has slid. In talking with Florida Communities Trust, we brought to their attention in November and December the possible interest of getting another appraisal. And they felt that because the contract had been signed in November, about within a year of one of the appraisals and about at a year of the others, that and also given the fact that they had reviewed it and approved it, that they felt that from their standpoint, the $3.6 million that they were putting into, they felt was justified by the appraisals that had been completed. So that was the message that they gave to us. They didn't want to see any further delays. They felt like this price is substantiated by the appraisal work that's been done. I think that if we were to try and, first of all, the Joneses would have to be willing to separate out the 2.5 acres to do that. So far, they've consistently indicated that they are not, which would mean that if we waited down the road and another opportunity came up to try and buy the 2.5 acres down the road from a subsequent owner, at that point, there's no guarantee, first of all, that there will be any Florida Communities Trust dollars available. That program expires in 2010. Second, even if that happened next year or the year after, the grant program requirements have changed since the 2005 cycle, and also scaling the project back from the 16 acres down to the 2.5 acres would likely make it difficult to compete with the other programs or the other projects that would be coming to the table. It's become an increasingly competitive program, so I think it would be very difficult to come back and try and do this again with FCT dollars. And one of the ways I look at it is the Florida, to buy the front half, you'd basically, is almost equivalent to what you would be paying out of the county share. And the back half is almost, you could look at it from the standpoint as what the Florida Communities Trust component is.
So,
thank you.
But basically, it would just need another extension.
To do additional appraisal work, we would have to get another extension. Yes, sir.
Okay, gentlemen, we're ready for a motion or either further discussion.
We've got somebody who'd like to speak there.
We've closed the public hearing, but I will allow you to speak, please.
I thank you for the opportunity to get up and speak again, Madam Chairman. I spoke to Mr. Jones, and he wants to know if it's really just a matter of the money, the $8 million, or if there's still this position that if the money were to change as far as the amount, the separation of this property, the front from the back, because that's something that they will not concede to. But if it's the appraisal issue, if they were willing to accept less than the appraised and what was offered at $8 million, and that's what was offered, is that going to be enough to satisfy the individuals that are concerned with the amount of $8 million?
I think that the appraisal, since it isn't up to date and it's on the very high end, is difficult because of where we are today financially. We are looking at our budget, and it's really just not there.
If you would allow me one moment.
We can take a 10-minute break. We're due for a break for captioning right now, so we'll take a 10 to 15-minute break. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going, buddy? Good. What brings you down?
Well, sure you have enough time? How about another half hour? You're leaving us for Wesley? You might fit. Oh boy. Well, it's a fizzy water.
I call this meeting back to order, please. We are in the middle of a public hearing on consideration to approve purchase of Jones Pier site under the County Environmental Lands Program. And we have taken a short recess, and we'll see if we have any other developments.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Yes.
As I mentioned, this has been an extremely difficult choice here for me, and I normally am a wholehearted supporter of our conservation lands program, but trying to do the right thing with county tax dollars here. We have two appraisals that came in very close together, one at 6.8 million, one at 7 million. The average of that is pretty much right at 6.9 million. The property appraiser has given us an early indication that he thinks the property assessed value is going to go down between 5 to 10% in this coming tax roll. So if I take a 5% value, that's about $350,000. So I would like to make a motion that we enter an agreement to purchase the entire parcel at a price of $6,750,000.
I'll second that.
For discussion. Any further discussion?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to see this thing move forward, but I can't support it at the current price. I understand with the SCT there's some urgency about the appraisal, so that's why I took the 5% value off the average of the two lower appraisals. And talking to some of the folks in the audience, apparently there's a lot of volunteer support, willing to step forward and take over a lot of the management of that property, and volunteers and not-profits that will step up and help reduce the cost of the management of the property. So I make my motion based on that. It allows us to buy the whole property, preserve the Jones heritage, but I think coming in at a price that I feel I can justify to my constituents. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on this.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, Madam Chair, in addition to that, the management plan that's in front of us, this is, I don't like what I saw as far as a management plan. I would like to see something a little more flavored with the historical aspects of the Jungle Trail as well as the historical aspects of the Jones Farmstead. Exactly what that is, I don't want to sit up here and do that today, but I didn't see that in the little cartoon in front of me. And I would like to see that as a stop. I would like to see that have a lot more utility to visitors and to the public. And that's, I feel strongly about that to the point where if I can't get that, I would vote against this project. So I would support Commissioner O'Brien's motion at the price, and if it's accepted, fine. If not, well, we'll have to move on. But I do feel strongly about the public access to this and the utility of this piece of property, and it being able to, it would probably be best placed in the Historical Society's jurisdiction or realm of some kind, so that they can have a management plan very similar to what we're looking at with the Archie Smith Fish House, with the Holstrom Farmstead down there. I mean, we've got more of these, and these can be, I'm not after a break-even scenario, but they certainly can generate revenue to offset the costs that have concerned Commissioner Flesher so much also. So that's where I am on this.
Commissioner Wheeler?
I would agree with that. I would like to ask Matt Sexton, though, is the $3,654,000, does that number stand, or is that, I mean, as long as the money's already allotted and stuff, can we still plan on that amount of money being contributed?
45%.
No.
Is it a percentage or a number?
Percentage only.
The number is an actual percentage, and I also have some new information, if I may share.
Yes.
I've spoken with the Joneses at length, and they've indicated that they would be willing to drop their price from $8 million to $7 million. That's a $1 million drop. It's $500,000 below the average of the lowest and the highest appraisal, and it is $1.13 million less than the Florida Communities Trust approved review appraisal.
Thank you. This will take, to approve this, a 4.
Well, I just wanted to ask a point of clarification. At the lower price now,
Okay.
are we at just a normal majority vote now? Or?
Yes, if the $7 million would bring it below the average of the appraisals, thus
So we
it
can
would be
just
a normal
take a normal
majority, 3 to 5 to pass.
But now, that wasn't the motion. It was $6,750,000.
Understood. This was new information. I wanted to make sure you were aware of.
I appreciate that.
One other point you raised regarding the management plan and making sure that we have as much public access and opportunity. I believe that is absolutely possible to accomplish in the FCT management plan. They are certainly willing to do that, and we can work with the commissioners and staff as much as necessary to come up with a management plan that's satisfactory to you.
Okay.
I see one more person that wants to speak.
Madam Chair, I trust
Oh, wait, no, would you come to the mic, please?
Gregory Garcia again for the record. Madam Chair, honorable board members, trust you can understand that the reason they're lowering it is because of the importance of preserving their heritage. They're putting a greater value on that than they already have, and trust that you would understand and take that into your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to adjust your motion to $7 million if that does the deal? Do you have a yes or no? You're contemplating. Okay, don't let me interrupt you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, if I could, help Commissioner O'Brien with it. I think that his rationale is right in line. I think the $7 million is the appraisal back then. I think a 5% drop is appropriate. I'm not trying to hammer anybody here, but I'm trying to be as fair to the taxpayers as I possibly can. I certainly want this project, but I want it to be in a management style that is very conducive to public access. I'm not trying to nickel and dime anybody to death, but it's something that I think Commissioner O'Brien's right on point with. And I would like to leave my second the way it is.
Would you like to?
We'll be ready for the vote then.
Madam Chair,
Yes, let's move
the new motion is most certainly more appealing for the commitment that we are discussing now. And during the break, I had the opportunity to speak with Ruth Stambridge, who also wants to step up to the plate and get something going for the maintenance to ensure that the maintenance program is done in the right fashion, in the best interest and the least cost to the taxpayer. And I appreciate those words of encouragement as well. That was one of my objections, as you pointed out, Commissioner Davis, that and as far as Jens Stripson has also said that he would like to see a positive management plan. So I'm very encouraged by all the people that are here today to want to make this move forward, coupled with the new monetary number that has been created for a motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate everybody's input on this. This is not easy. It's very difficult. But I am going to make this unanimous. We are dealing with taxpayers' money at this point. There is no way we can, go any other way. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. I hope that we're able to come to agreement. The next item, Winter Grove subdivision petition, water service, 28th and 29th Courts and 70th Place, North and North Winter Beach, 69th Street.
We might want to wait a minute.
I'll wait just a moment until... Thank you.
I'm Dan Chastain, Manager of Assessment Projects. This beautiful little subdivision, Winter Grove, was developed in 1985 when the county's water lines weren't anywhere near. Water was not available. Consequently, the development of 28 parcels has been solely dependent upon well water, and we have 75% of the owners.
Just a minute, please. We can't hear. Thank you.
And we have a budget, an estimated cost to install the water system. Now that the new water main has been installed along 69th Street for a new development across from this property called Winter Village. It's moving very slow like a lot of real estate, but we do have a water line available now. Our budget and estimated cost is $80,000. For these half-acre lots, the cost looks very favorable, in the range of $2,700 to $2,900 for the typical half-acre lot. And we're ready to move forward with it if we can get your approval today.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Anyone from the public like to speak? Seeing none, I'll close it. Accept the motion.
Motion to approve.
Second, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Passes.
Thank you, Dan.
Public notice items. Put my glasses on. It's almost lunchtime. Ordinance and amending code section 102.04, order of business to add informational items to the board agenda. Memorandum dated February 25th, 2008, page 369. Number 2, notice of scheduled public workshop on March 13, 2008. Invitation from school board to attend a joint workshop to discuss items of mutual interest. Memorandum dated February 26, 2008, pages 370, 371. Notice of executive session on March 11, 2008. The county administrator will schedule an executive session meeting with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss IAFF union negotiations at a time to be announced. County administrators matters, a renewal of employment agreement. Memorandum dated February 25, 2008, pages 372 to 378.
Yes, Commissioners, in front of you I have today is renewal of my contract. Currently, I have a one-year contract, and I'm proposing to renew that with no salary increase and no cost of living. Or I have a second proposal where it's a 3-year contract with no increase in salary the first year and decreasing my severance package for each year of the agreement, and a cost of living only during the 2-year and 3-year part of the agreement. And those are the two options that I've outlined.
Thank you. Any questions of our county administrator?
Mr. Baird, what does the 2 months of your severance package part, what's the total dollar figure on a monthly basis of, and that's only if it's exercised, I understand, but what is the dollars involved on a per month basis?
On a per month basis, that would be about, I think it's about, that would be a $15,000 difference per month.
Per month?
Roughly.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? I'll accept a motion since I can't make one.
Madam Chair, I would move that we select option 2, which is a 3-year package with the decreasing severance package.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, any discussion?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to add...
Wait just a minute, I'll...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
I could support Mr. Baird's contract, but there's things in the contract that I would like to see removed, and I'd like to see it negotiated as such. Under the proposed contract, in addition to all the fringe benefits the other employees have, Mr. Baird receives a county contribution to a deferred compensation plan, which amounts to $20,500 annually. That's in addition to the deferred compensation that he gets through the Florida retirement system of about $23,964, which gives him about $44,464 annually going into a retirement fund. No other county employee has, except Will Collins also does. Also, I'd like to remove the long-term disability that we pay for Mr. Baird. We don't do that for anyone else. Also, the $2,610 that we pay for family health insurance that we don't do for any other employees. I'd also like to remove the one word in there for a pager, because nobody uses pagers anymore. I think that's just an oversight. The other question I have is, under the contract, if we or the commission is ever going to terminate the contract with Mr. Baird, we've got to give 90 days notice, which in essence gives him about 15 months severance pay instead of 12 months severance pay. And then also, if he has a serious life-threatening illness, we continue to pay him and give him his 12 months, which we do for no other employee. And also that the administrator resigns under pressure from one or more commissioners or under circumstances suggesting constructive discharge. I'd like them out of the separation clause. I think that this opens the door to similar to what we went through earlier with the executive aide, and I think the separation clauses here, what I have a problem with, I don't have a problem with Mr. Baird's salary. His salary is higher than other counties our size or larger, but I think Mr. Baird overall does a very good job. I just have a serious problem in approving this severance package and what it would cost us to if we separate our working relationship.
But you have no problem with the contract?
I have no problem with the salary. I have several problems with the contract.
With a contract concept?
No.
Okay,
I would also prefer to see maybe a 60-day severance package rather than 12 months or 15 months.
I've always had issues with the severance package, and of course, I mean, there's all kind of things that I'd like to see Joe change as far as, and on his evaluation such as that. Now, I haven't seen the evaluation this year. I would still need to do that as far as wrapping up employee negotiations and especially with what we're going through with some of the issues with employees. I think that there's certainly room that he can improve upon, and I'll make no bones about that. However, with us going in forward with what we're looking at in the next couple years, I can't think of a better person to be at the helm from his experience, and I think Commissioner Wheeler mentioned that. Anything that I can do to alleviate some of the severance package, these contracts were in place before I think everybody's time here. And we've had the opportunity to see what happens when one has been exercised. It's certainly not what I want to do as far as paying a year's severance package right now. And I guess really my question to Mr. Collins is, let's suppose that we don't renew this, and let's suppose that we still keep Joe with a different contract then, and move forward. Is he still entitled to his severance?
If you don't renew on generally the same terms or terms that are agreed by the administrator, he could invoke his severance rights. In other words, you can't unilaterally force him to change the terms of his contract without giving him the option to invoke a severance package.
Okay, thank you.
He owns the contract, is that correct?
Pardon me?
He owns the contract, is that correct?
Well, it's a contract. Yeah, he has the contract rights that were set out between the board and he in a prior year.
Right.
In terms of severance rights.
Thank you. Mr. Flesher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This contract is somewhat cumbersome and lucrative, and I'm not stating that somebody in the position of county administrator does not deserve as many benefits as they can achieve. I wasn't sitting in this chair when this contract was written, and I don't agree with many of the aspects of not only the separation but also the maintenance aspects of paying the insurance and the second retirement package and the long-term disability that we ask many of our employees to do, or they don't get that benefit. As simple as that. We're also facing strong economic challenges and decisions that will have to be made, and I think this should come across the board as opposed to just on the front line or in the center. It should be across the board, and I have discussed that with Joe Baird, and I've asked him to pare down some of those situations in his contract, and his response was absolutely not. He is not willing to negotiate any one of those elements that are written into his contract, and that just brings some concern to me that we don't have a willingness to be able to be representative of what we may be asking, what I felt we may be asking some employees to do, which Joe Baird says we will be asking employees to do. Not placing words, but placing fact in discussion. And with that said, most certainly it's a salary that is slightly higher than other counties of similar size. Joe is a hard worker. He's got a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of employees and a lot of commitment to this community, and he's got to deal with the 5 of us. So with that said, again, I don't have a tremendous challenge with the salary. I'm pleased that Joe does not want to foresee a salary increase or a cost of living increase, but I think that this is time for a pare down. It's going to happen across the board, and I don't believe that we're being good stewards and leading a good example by approving a contract that we did see what could happen just last year as we had an attorney wave a piece of paper in front of us saying you don't want to go there. No, we didn't want to be there, but unfortunately the taxpayers were there at the cost of the premium of the policy. So no further with that.
I would support Commissioner O'Brien's motion. I think we are headed into really uncharted waters in this community and in the state and in the nation. And we've never been there before with to this degree. I think we are most fortunate to have someone who has come up through the ranks, who knows the budget, every penny, dime, and dollar. And if we chose to not renew this contract, I do believe that somebody else would pick him up quickly. And he is probably, well, I will state, he is the most proficient, experienced administrator I have ever worked with. That includes the school board and the city. And at this time, if we went out to do a national search, it would take time and more money than what we have now. So I am in support of Commissioner O'Brien's motion. So we had anything?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Wheeler suggested a few changes. What I would say, obviously, we take the word pager out because that's irrelevant. Commissioner Wheeler brought up the 90 days notice, and in my mind is, with the 90 days, we get a transition period. If we just gave 30 days notice, there's no way we could advertise and have a replacement in, so we would be somewhat rudderless during that period. So I think the 90 days is a good faith thing, that we can conduct a search, we can bring in a new administrator if that's what we end up doing, and there'd be a transition with Joe still here working with the new administrator and making things smooth. So I see the 90 days as just allowing that transition period to be effective for the county. I did speak to several of the department heads, not all of them, but several of the department heads, and I think everybody's unanimous in that, Joe is the best money guy we have around. We have one of the lowest millage rates in the state. Certainly, you get a few comments that, well, my management style might be a little different, and I think that's true of everybody. And if we move forward and sign this contract, and I'll certainly have some written request to provide Joe, and where I see improvements in that area. But Chairman Bowden, I think you hit the nail on the head. We have so many critical things coming forward to take the captain off the ship at this point. I think it actually would be irresponsible to the taxpayers putting us in that situation.
So you would like to amend your motion to take out the
I think take out the word pager. You don't have a pager now, do you, Joe?
No,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
I don't. No.
He's in violation of the contract.
I've got a cell phone that's on 24
the
hours.
second, did you second?
Yes, I did.
Will you
I'm
will you
more
accept?
happy to take
Take
that
the
out.
second, okay. Commissioner Flesher? I mean, sorry, Wheeler.
Just because we agreed today,
Oh, that was startling.
I can understand the shock value.
A comment on what Commissioner Bryan said. In every organization I've ever read about, been involved with, or seen, when the CEO, and I'm not, and by no means am I saying that Joe's going to be terminated. In fact, I think just the opposite. I think Joe brings a lot to the table, and he probably knows more about the county than anybody else in this building. But this is a contract, something we need to be aware of. And with the 90 days notice that we give, I don't know of any company that's ever replaced a CEO or terminated a CEO that's left them at the helm. They are dismissed the day they're notified. So you're looking at an additional 90-day severance pay if he's terminated, in addition to 12 months already in the contract. And usually there's bad blood when something like that happens, and that CEO leaves then. So it still equates to about 15 months. The other thing I have a tremendous problem with is if the administrator resigns under pressure from one or more county commissioners. I mean, if that's basically saying if he can't get along with one of us, he's got a right to exercise his contract. And it takes three of us to make a decision on anything. And I think that really leaves us hanging out there. And I disagree with that clause strongly, the 90 days strongly. And then the other things that I mentioned, just because, the additional, what I'd like to take out of the contract that I mentioned before with the additional retirement system of the deferred comp and the amount paid for dependent coverage and stuff comes to about $23,900 less than what this contract certainly has. But I think that the 90 days is important to come out. Also, the one commissioner, and I would like to see the other compensations. I'd like to see us treat our employees properly and also equally. The administrator works at the pleasure of the board, doesn't have property rights, but in actuality the contract gives them even more rights than somebody with property rights. And it's just, and as I said, my biggest problem, and has been for the last 3 years, this is the fourth time I voted on this, and is the separation clause. I just have a big problem with that, and if you all recall, for the bad memories, the situation we got into with our administrative aid, because the same clause was in that contract. And so I just think it takes 3 votes here, and that because an administrator or an employee can't get along with 1 out of 5 of us, because it takes 3 of us to act as one. Only 3 of us, we have to agree to do something. And those are my comments, and I won't support anything, below that.
Do you want to adjust your motion at all? As the second time I've asked you this today. I don't mean to be bad to you.
No. I agree with some of the things you're saying, Commissioner Wheeler. I still think the 90 days is important. I do have an issue with the one county commissioner pressure. It does sound like that is too much of an easy out. You would think it almost should read 3 or more county commissioners.
I have that in the contract. I think Gary will agree that that's been tested.
Yes, it has.
And I haven't exercised it, and I don't intend to. I think he'll agree that that's been, and I've had problems with commissioners. I'm a professional. I don't won't walk away. But, if you've ever been in this environment as a county administrator, things can be done that are just ridiculous, and it makes both parties, it makes a commissioner back off and be professional. It's been tested with me. I've been around a long time. I don't think you'll ever see me exercise that.
And there's a big difference in a CEO and a secretary.
Well, the point is the same clauses in there. And
Right,
the point is, and I agree with Joe. And as long as it wouldn't happen, why leave it in there? Why not take it out where it takes 3 commissioners to do something? And I would agree with Joe. Joe is a very strong personality. It's one of the things I respect about him. You know where he stands, and you can have a face-to-face argument with him and walk away and still working on the problems of the county. And I actually respect that in Joe, and Joe and I have discussed that over the years. But I think that leaves us hanging out there, and I just strongly disagree with it.
Any further discussion?
I'll leave my motion as it stands with the one change to delete the word pager. Yes, ma'am.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passes 3-2. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Human Resources, Indian River County Prescription Discount Card Program, memorandum dated February 25th, 2008, 379 to 382. Is it still morning? Good morning.
Just about.
Morning.
No.
There it is. Jim Sexton, Human Resources Director.
Brad Bernauer, Human Services Director.
We're here today. There's really no action needed by the board. We're just here on good news. The prescription card is now available to all Indian River County residents. As you recall, the board entered into an agreement with Caremark through National Association of Counties, and now there is a Indian River County prescription discount card available to all citizens. It is not an insurance plan. It will not replace Medicare, Group D, or Part D, or any other medical insurance that you have that covers prescriptions. This card is good for those who are uninsured or underinsured, or if there is a prescription medication that is not covered by your health insurance plan, this card can help you. It could get you up to, or it says an average of 20% savings. So these cards are going to be available at many places throughout Indian River County, the Health Department, the Human Services Department, the Senior Resource Association, the Sebastian Family Walk-In Clinic, Treasure Coast Community Health, Sebastian River Medical Center, Visiting Nurses Association, and in the Human Resources Office here in the Building B. We're going to put this information on the website. We'll probably go out. I believe the Hometown News already ran an article this weekend about this, about the card being active now. So we just wanted to let you know that it's officially being offered, and your diligence in researching the program and accepting the program and then entering into an agreement is now in effect.
Good.
So they are available.
That's great. Any comments or questions?
Yes.
So we have this card that this will be available. All we need to do is use this card.
That is it.
And present this at the pharmacist.
That is correct.
Is there any paperwork to be filled out?
No. Nothing. No registration. You will not be asked to fill out a form. Just like you did, you will tear off the perforated section of that, and that is your card. Here, it'll be on camera. That is your Indian River prescription discount card. Use it for the whole family. And now you have one too, Commissioner Bowden.
And now this will also be able to be laid upon any insurance or overtake some shortcomings.
Yes, if your insurance doesn't cover some prescriptions you might be on, then you can use this card, but it is not a supplement to your prescription RX plan at all. It can't be used in conjunction with a prescription RX plan. So it's for any prescription drug not covered under your plan or for those without insurance. And I understand there's some part-time employees here who have already collected the card and said basically they have prescriptions, but they're not covered under the health insurance, and anything helps.
Yes, this is a good thing.
Thanks for getting this forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Brad Bernauer and his group over at Human Services for doing some of the legwork also. And he's technically kind of going to be overseeing, since he's right on the front lines, if you will. I'm over in Building B in Human Resources. he's hands-on with the folks who are probably going to most need this type of plan.
Thank you.
Madam, if I could just add two things. One is, one other location where these cards are available is up on my desk upstairs. I have a display rack of them. I've given out quite a few already. The other thing is, most people don't realize is that this can also be used if you have prescriptions for your pets. A lot of times, for certain things like diabetes in animals and
sometimes
arthritis.
those prescriptions are more expensive than ours. My pet
And
is.
so this card can be used for those veterinary prescriptions you have if it's a human-based type prescription. So that's another great thing. So
And I think you can get those cards at all 5 of our desks.
Okay. I know there's on mine.
I'll be able to monitor this. This company also provides a monthly report back to us so that I can report back to you, and it'll tell me how many individuals in the county are using the program and the cost savings to the residents.
And if we can put this on the website and instructions and your name
Yes.
as the point person, that would be great.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Consulting services, wait a minute, back up here to number 1. Schuman Drive east of Kildare Drive, utility canal crossing replacement project in Sebastian, UCP number 3045, memorandum dated February 8, 2008, 383 to 387.
Madam Chair, I move to approve A and B.
Thank you.
I'll
May I have a
second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Consulting services work, order number 17, amendment 1, with Kimley Horn for permitting, design, and construction services for replacement of the installation of new inline pump station at 90th Avenue and CR 510-UCP 2669. Memorandum
Madam
dated.
Chair, motion approved.
Thank
Second.
you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. County Attorney's Matters, necessary to take resolution for parcels of property located at the southwest corner of State Road 60 and 66th Avenue.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Bill DeBrawl, Deputy County Attorney. Before you today, you have a necessity of take resolution for a parcel of property located at 66th Avenue and State Road 60. The boundaries of this parcel go from State Road 60 to the south to 16th Street, and 66 is the borderline on the eastern edge of the property. This is a 34.5 acre tract. The county's taking for this property will consist of 7.39 acres. It will be for right-of-way along 66th Avenue, which is currently dirt. It will now go to a 2- and 3-lane roadway. And there will also be some additional right-of-way along 16th Avenue for that planned improvement. The property is zoned in the front, RM8. In the rear part of the property, the southern part of the property, is zoned RM6. The owners of this property, State Highway 60/Kings Highway LLC, have submitted a preliminary site plan to Community Development back in August, showing a multifamily development. They have not responded to any of staff's comments and have not formally submitted anything. We've had this property appraised. The appraisal comes out at $1.3 million and change. The other side has also had this matter appraised at $2.8 million. They're claiming a substantial severance damages with this parcel of property. We're asking you to do 2 things here today. We're asking you to, number 1, pass the resolution of necessity. The resolution of necessity will formally state that this property is needed by the county for the improvements to not only 66th Avenue, but also 16th Street. It will give us authority to file an action in condemnation in eminent domain and prosecute that action. Now, State Highway 60 LLC will not object to our take. They will not challenge the resolution of necessity. What will happen is that we will deposit a certain amount, at least the amount of the $1.3 million appraisal, into the registry of the court. We will go ahead and file a lawsuit in eminent domain Shortly thereafter, deposit that amount in escrow or more, should you decide to offer more, as a binding or a unconditional offer. We will receive title to the property, and State Highway 60 will receive the funds that we deposit into the court. The parties have scheduled a mediation for May 5th this year, where hopefully we would work out the final details. Now, the second thing, aside from passing the resolution of necessity that we're asking you to do here, is to go ahead and make an unconditional offer of $1.5 million. That's about 14% over the appraised value that the county's appraiser, Peter Armfield, has come up with. The reason we're asking you to go above the appraised value is in mitigation of attorney's fees in an eminent domain matter. Now, you understand and you recall that in eminent domain, the condemning authority, in this case the county, is going to be responsible for the other parties' fees, attorney's fees, appraisals fees, and costs. And that attorney's fee is figured out on a formula for the amount of benefit the attorney gains for their client. So if we would offer $1.3 million and at mediation settle at $1.5 million, the attorney's fee would be $66,000 that would go to the other side. If we go a little bit higher on our offer, our unconditional offer, we're hoping to keep down the attorney's fees that may result as a result of this take. So those are the two things that we're asking for this morning. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions, Commissioners?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. DeBrawl, so what you're saying is we offer this and they either take it or don't. There's no counter. There's no, it is basically, it is what it is whenever we offer it to them.
Yes, we can go up from the $1.5 million. We can offer other things instead of money as far as considerations. It's a negotiating purchase, just like you went through the negotiating purchase with the Jones Pier this morning. Only this will be in a mediation setting, and after the conclusion of mediation, if the parties reach an agreement, we would go ahead and bring that back to you if it would be more than the $1.5 million.
Now, wait a minute. So what you're saying is the 1.3 is what we're saying it's worth?
Correct.
But you're saying offer 1.5 in hopes that they would take it and avoid any future expenses?
Yes.
Okay. But if they don't take it, and then we start to incur future expenses, at what point do we rescind our 1.5?
The 1.5 would be out there. We wouldn't rescind that. That would be an unconditional offer that would be made.
Well, unconditional, that means that they could not change the conditions, or does that mean that we could not change the conditions?
That you could not change the conditions and come lower.
I'm having a hard time following that.
Okay.
And where I'd like to go with this, I don't mind offering the 1.5, but they either take it or we go to court.
Up or down?
And if they don't take it and we go to court, I'm not going to offer them 1.5. I'm going to offer them what we have to take them for us to be able to get this hurricane route for the State Road 60 to be able to widen it so we can safely evacuate if we have to.
This is for 66th Avenue, not property on 60.
Well, that whole intersection. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, don't we have some retention issues there also that we're working on?
There is a 3-acre retention pond that we're going to have to purchase also.
My point. I mean, there's as far as the north-south route, that does concern me, but the east-west is very important also, and that's where I stand unless you can enlighten me in a different direction.
No, and I understand your concerns as far as the offer. If you look at the distance that the parties are apart in their appraisals at this point, where they're at 2.8, our appraisal is at 1.3. So, you know, that's where we stand as far as the appraisals. And we want to try and hold down the attorney's fees that may result from the purchase of the property. At the $1.3 million figure, it comes out to be about $177,000 an acre. At the $1.5 million figure, it comes out to be about $2,003 per acre. 203.
Yeah, 200.
Sorry.
A little different. Commissioner.
When you go to court in eminent domain, you'll have two appraisals. The county's at 1.3 and theirs at 2.8. And the jury is required to find somewhere within the range of expert testimony. So effectively, our appraisal is a floor and theirs is a ceiling. I think the 1.5 offer is to as an incentive not to go to trial.
Right.
And to set a higher bar for them to show that they can obtain benefits, because if we've offered it, they can only get attorney's fees for benefits they obtain in excess of our slightly higher offer than appraisal. I don't think we can reasonably expect that a jury would find the absolute lowest value that's presented to them or the absolute highest. It's likely that they'll find somewhere within the range of expert testimony. And we're just trying to avoid some of those expenses of trial by making a better offer out of the box and keep down the costs of trial.
Well, I think the plan is good. I don't object to that, but it's an up or down thing.
Right. If they don't take 1.5, or it would either go to condemnation and the jury would decide, or the other possibility is mediation would come up with some settlement that we would bring back to you for consideration based on whatever those negotiating factors have turned out to be at mediation, and disclose them.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, if the property owner was being cooperative and wanted to work with the county, how much right-of-way would we need to buy on that property?
We would need to buy all of the right-of-way, because on the eastern side...
All 7.39 acres?
Yes, sir. On the eastern side of this property, and if the Elmo was working, I could show you, there's a canal that runs north-south, and so we cannot take any property from the east side in order to build 66th Avenue. We have to take it all from the west. And since the right-of-way is already there, we have our minimum needed, we would have to purchase the remainder.
No, I realize we have to purchase all the right-of-way we need, but would that equate to 7.39 acres?
Yes.
In other words, would we need 50 feet of their frontage or something, or do we need the whole 7.39 acres?
Yes.
Why?
For, first of all, road right-of-way to actually build 66th Avenue and 16th Street, and the drainage that will be necessary to go along with that. Plus, we need a fairly substantial retention pond halfway in between 16th and State Road 60.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
No, I understand what Bill's proposing. I guess this is kind of a catch-22, because if they wanted to develop this property, they would have to pay for road improvements on 66th Avenue. So it seems the higher they make the right-of-way cost, the higher their development cost is, which would lower their profit and lower their value. So it's kind of in my mind, kind of a spiraling downhill pattern there. But I understand what you're proposing in the 1.5.
If they would come forward with their proposal, if they would be going forward with their proposed development, they would have to pave halfway to their entrance. And I imagine that they would put their entrance more toward the north than toward the south. But the planners are telling us that they would not be able to access this development off State Road 60, but they would have to come in on 66th Avenue. And as a result of their development, they would have to go ahead and pave to their point of entry from State Road 60. But they're not going to come forward, and I doubt in this market if they are going to at any time in the future.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Moving right along, Commissioner Wesley Davis, you have a...
Oh, yes.
Is this yours?
Yes, this is the, just where we are with this, Commissioners, this is the, some of the language moving forward with the Holstrom farmstead down there, very, very similar to some of the issues we're going to be dealing with some of the other historical purchases. We've got the Historical Society, society that's willing to come forward and start some of the process of making some improvements down there, but they can't do that without a lease, and we can't draw a lease without some consensus from the Commission as far as directing county staff.
So what do you propose?
I move that we direct county staff to draft up the lease to be able to allow them to move forward.
And bring it back,
Second that.
bring it back to us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I now have two items. The first one is just consideration to reschedule the April 1st meeting to the end of the month, to April 29th. I want to make sure it's very clear this is not a cancellation, but it is a rescheduling of the meeting. We'll still have our full complement of meetings in April. I bring this up just because that week of March 31st through April 4th is the spring break for the schools. I know several of us have children that will be off, and we might want to do something with them, and staff and other employees may have kids too. So I just bring it up for consideration. I've talked to staff. I don't think they have any pressing issues from the April 1st that couldn't be moved back to the 29th. So I bring it up for discussion, or I'll go ahead and move that we reschedule to April 29th.
Second.
Having discussion? I do have a hurricane conference starting that day, so I'll be able to go.
On the 29th?
Yes.
Oh.
I would be able, no, not on the 29th, on the regular meeting day. I was going to leave after the hurricane.
If we can get Commissioner Davis to promise not to talk too much on the 29th, then you can leave early.
No,
Make it a quick.
no, it works out for your.
Oh, it does work out for you. Okay, well then good.
And I wouldn't do that.
Talk a lot?
Right.
Okay, good.
Fortunately, even if he does, he talks fast.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes by vote. Do you have another item, please?
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully everybody, and I apologize it didn't get out until late Monday, but what you have is an email that was sent to me from Bob Adair, who is the chair of the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and he's been very involved as we've gone through the mining regulations and the moratorium. It was an email forwarded to him by Diana Ferguson from the Florida Association of Counties, relaying that Senator Bennett has filed Senate Bill 2406. And the critical part of this legislation is that it states that no county or municipality shall enact or enforce any ordinance, resolution, regulation, rule, policy, or other action that prohibits or prevents the construction or operation of a limestone mine. And I think this totally preempts any local regulatory authority on mining applications. What I would like at this point, to give everybody time to digest this, but I think it's critical we move this forward, is at this point just request that the county attorney draft a resolution opposing this bill that we can then send to our legislatures. That'll give us time for you all to digest a little bit more before we vote on the final word in the resolution.
We'll bring it back after the...
Absolutely. It would just be for have a county attorney to hopefully in the next week.
Okay, do you have a motion?
I move county attorney to draft a resolution opposing Senate Bill 2406.
I second, to just bring back the resolution and we can...
And we can nitpick the wording at that point and then a final vote.
Any discussion?
Discussion, yes.
Yes.
Ma'am. Just for your information, the bill that's been entered prohibits, or basically would preempt limestone mining. I'm not sure that we have limestone in this county, so I'm not really sure that it would be affect us. And I just wanted to make you aware that the first resolution the county passed this year was a resolution opposing state preemption over mining for construction aggregate materials. And it went through a lot of whereases about the status of the state task force and resolved that local governments should continue to have ultimate permitting authority over mining of construction aggregate materials, that the board's opposed to state preemption of aggregate mining regulation, and the clerk was directed to send copies of the resolution to the local legislative delegation, the governor, the president of the Senate, speaker of the House, and the strategic aggregate review task force. So that was done January 8th of this year.
We're covered.
On record. I think the only change we would be making is to make a specific reference to Senate Bill 2406, which may or may not apply to us in that I'm not sure we have lime rock in this county.
Commissioner?
I think the question is A, do we? And if we do, then to keep consistent with our resolution to begin with, we should send another one, as far as local control to the Senate.
It's really more local control.
It's what it's all about, absolutely. And so if you would, Mr. Collins and Commissioner O'Brien, I'd like to be able to make that determination just so we know whether or not what we have in our county is considered limestone and what their definition of that is. And then if you do, Mr. Collins, determine that it's not affecting us, come back. But if you do decide that it is affecting us, come back with a resolution stating such.
Come back one way or the other.
Yes.
I do share the same concern that it specifically says limestone, and I did speak to representatives, as I mentioned earlier, And I would like you to clarify that to ensure that we're going in the right direction. The P&Z is working very hard in working out the future of Indian River County for mining, and I want to ensure that this does not interfere in that process. I do believe in home rule and local control of what we need to do for our economy, and I did not want any legislation to interfere with that process or any of our actions to interfere with the likelihood of a positive outcome. A lot of great suggestions are coming out of the meeting. We've all taken some tours of some very positive mining experiences, and I would like to see everything move forward, whatever the outcome is. But I wanted to ensure that we had our home rule. Thank you, Will.
And just one last thing, in the wording of the bill, they refer to one limestone, and then they refer to lime rock. And if you read the strategic report, that encompasses a wide variety of levels of material. So this is very broadly written, and it doesn't. And Will, your point is, I think they have identified 6 areas of strategic reserves, but this doesn't reference those 6 areas of strategic reserves. It just says lime rock or limestone, which I feel is very broad. And I believe it does threaten our home rule.
It's a generic term.
Yeah, it's very generic, and it's very broad-based.
We'll be clarifying that, though?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, okay.
I'd just like
Speak
to
up.
say that I think, as Wesley said, it's important that whether we have lime rock or limestone in this county at all, we need to support the other counties that will have to confront this bill, because I think there's a push, and there has been a push by the state legislature for quite a while to take more and more home rule away. They've done it with billboards, they tried with cell towers, now with mining, and I think it's important that the League of Counties stick together to try and protect their interests and keep home rule, where people come in meetings like this and face us and talk to us on a daily basis. And I think counties can better decide for themselves what they need to do in their county rather than have the state legislature do that. And also, I'd like to request that Mr. Baird talk to Mr. Book, our lobbyist that follows this and keeps us informed as to what's going on.
Absolutely.
So it's still a 5-0?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, would like to say that we got a check, $103,000 to Indian River County from U.S. Department of Interior National Park Service. We attended in Sebastian this weekend, and we're delighted. I think you
Wonderful
have...
experience.
Yes, it was a great experience, beautiful day. And I think you have a ribbon that you cut?
Yes, and I want to thank Roland DeBloy and Beth Powell, our Conservation Lands management team, for bringing this project forward. It is a beautiful site. And they also have partnered with our solid waste district. This bow was made out of recycled material from the landfill and stuff. So I think it just shows we're very progressive.
And creative.
And actually, it's pretty nice stuff. It looks like you can make your blinds and drapers out of it. It's pretty durable. So congratulations to everybody involved in that project. It was a wonderful day up there.
I didn't have the opportunity to spend the entire day, but I did spend some of the time up there after soccer registration, and it was very well attended even after the 8 o'clock opening ceremony. There was a lot of people coming through, and I'm looking forward to the next, I believe it's 160 acres or something like that St. John's is looking at purchasing to add to that part of the community and expanding some of the...
I believe St. John's did close on that parcel, and I think they are meeting with staff. They are going to transfer a 1/3 undivided interest into that parcel to the county, and then we would incorporate those lands in the management of this parcel.
So we are moving forward, and we are setting the pace for our history and our future. Seeing no other business, so we close this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.